everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, now either by Disney or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it, Legends. Today I have for you the finale to a book I've been talking about through decades in the timeline now. Of course, if you're a normal person, when I talk about it, you can just read the whole thing through in this one sitting, unless you're a weirdo like me. I also have a short story that is 3 parts by Timothy Zahn. Those who know what I'm talking about. And some Clone Wars 2003 stuff. So I hope you'll join me for that. Starting with, we have the Clone Wars Adventures Volume 3, The Package, Stranger in Town, and One Battle. Not too much to say. They're pretty fun one-off little stories. Needless death, I said. I don't know what I meant by that because I already kind of forgot the story, if I'm being honest. But I do remember Plow Koon, cool, and Yoda, cool. So, I think Stranger in Town was the Yoda one. I think Plow Koon was either the package or the one battle. But yeah, it just basically, one of them was Yoda being cool, taking down the bad guys. Another one was Plow Koon being cool, taking down the bad guys. And then I forget what the other one was. And then you would head back to 2003 Clone Wars. Of course, they originally aired in little 3-minute segments. If you're watching it on Disney Plus or on YouTube, you have the Volume 1, Volume 2. So chapter 14 to 16 is the chapters that focus on, or have Luminara and Barasofi and Padme Amidala on the ice planet. It's on Ilum. All that happens there is at Ilium, the place where the Jedi get the crystals for the lightsabers and stuff. That gets harmed by the Separatists. And then Chapter 5, which is earlier on in the Clone Wars Volume 1, that focuses on Kit Fisto, on Mon Calamari, fighting in the ocean, which is actually pretty cool. He's kind of like the Aquaman of the Star Wars universe, kicking butt undersea. And it shows, Kit Fisto being cool. That's pretty much it. We also have back to the Clone Wars Adventures, Fierce Current. This is kind of a continuation of that little short clip you got to see in Volume 1 of the Clone Wars microseries by Jenny Tartakovsky. It's kind of a continuation off of that because we follow Kit Fisto, on the Mon Calamari seas doing stuff. And it's a pretty cool one. After that, we get to Heroes of Kartia? Cartosia? I don't know how to say the name of the planet. But all of 1, 2, and 3. And this was inside Star Wars Insider 68, 69, and 70, since it was a 3-parter. Put together, you have like about the length of a young adult novel. And it is written, of course, by Timothy Zahn. Non-spoiler wise, this short story basically gives you an explanation as to how the Sparty cloning cylinders that are in the Thrawn trilogy made it to Wayland. Now, in this, of course, we have Kim Doriana. This is the same character we saw in Outbound Flight. He had a big role to play in Outbound Flight, and he has a big role to play in these short stories because he is Palpatine's #1 secret agent, kind of like, well, not secret agent, but he's like this, like, very political manipulation guy. He is in the center, one of the closest guys to Palpatine, but the funniest thing is he also is a double agent for Sidious. Like, he gives information that he got from Palpatine to Sidious. Of course, they're the same person. But Kimmin doesn't know that, and that makes for some really kind of funny exchanges, like when Palpatine tells Doriana if they can keep things going on this planet for a little bit longer, reinforcements will arrive, but they might be there tonight, they might be there in 3 days, all depending on the opposition they face getting over here. And so he goes to tell Sidious about this, and he's like, I already know. And he's like freaking out because he's like, how does he know this? And he's like, did you think you're my only means of knowledge? Or whatever. But of course he knows because he's Palpatine and he said so already. But I just love stuff like that. Other than Doriana from Outbound Flight, he might have been in the original Thrawn trilogy, I don't remember. But other than that, there are no original characters in here. I mean, besides Sidious, of course. But there is no Anakin, no Obi-Wan, nobody that you know. These are all pretty much original characters. We even got a new Jedi in this book. We got like this Jedi who's a resident of the planet. Like he knows the Clone Wars going on, but he's like stationed on this planet, and he helps with minor disputes and whatnot. But the biggest thing with the Sparty cloning cylinders, if you haven't read the Thrawn trilogy, is it's basically a different way of cloning. Kamonians aren't the only ones that can do cloning. It's kind of like a faster process, too, of cloning. And Palpatine Sidious, doesn't want the cloning cylinders to get into the hands of the Separatists or the Republic, because that much power may be able to go out of his hands, and then things can be affected in ways he doesn't want, so he'd rather have it destroyed. Of course, there is a few thousands that make it to Wayland, which of course is good for Sidious because of future events. But also what I love about this is that the biggest plan in here was, because Doriana's kind of confused by the end of the story, without getting into spoilers, like, well, how does this help you? And he's like, well, because of the events of this, people aren't too happy with the Jedi in this sector of space. The sector of space isn't small. It may not be the entire galaxy, but for probably the next 50 years at least. I mean, they didn't say 50 years, they said the next couple decades, but, a couple generations. Everyone in this sector of space is going to hate Jedi. And if you have a plan down the line, Order 66, to annihilate all the Jedi, it would sure help if most of the galaxy is on board with that plan. And he accomplished that, at least in this sector of space. But yeah, they're seemingly the Sparty cylinders are seemingly destroyed by the end of this short story, or three-parter. But of course, we know that some of them made it to Wayland, which, if the name Wayland sounds familiar to those of you who do watch new canon, like Mr. Two Star Wars Nerds, or whoever else might be watching that also watches new canon. I know. Maybe 2 stars doesn't like the sequels, that's okay. But like some of the things in new canon, which is perfectly fine. Wayland, of course, has been mentioned again. I haven't watched the show, I just know about it because, on the internet you hear things. The planet Wayland has been reintroduced into Filoni's Bad Batch. So that's, another thing that might be cool for you if you get into this short story. I really enjoyed it. I think this short story is significantly better than pretty much a lot of Zahn's novels. I thoroughly enjoyed it, considering that there's pretty much not a single character in here that I actually care about. It got me to enjoy it very well. But anyway, moving forward, we have back to the 03 Clone Wars Adventures, Volume 2, Hide in Plain Sight. So, the comic says it takes place 5 months after episode 2. When I read Republic Commando, it said a year. The Clone Wars timeline is very confusing. Now, of course, I have to be honest, I didn't know where to place this story. I was looking at other people's timelines to see where they put it. It says 5 months, so you could technically put it earlier if you want. You can make your own timeline, fit it how best you want. The story doesn't really matter what the time that it's set in. So if you just ignore the 5-month thing, you can put it here. It really doesn't change where the characters are at because they're going all across space and stuff. It doesn't contradict anything if you put it here or if you put it earlier. This is just where I put it, but you can put it anywhere you want. It's just a little story with Barra Sophie and Luminara. I don't want to spoil it because it's Clone Wars adventures. They're little small comic strips. It's fun. You'll enjoy it if you read it. I'm just saying, I'm a really big, like, chronological order guy, so this kind of like really bothered my OCD, but I dealt with it. So if you want to put it earlier, you most certainly can, 5 months. If you want to just leave it here, you also can. You can also be a normal person and just read these all in one sitting, but I'm a weirdo and I have to do things chronologically, so there is that. We also lastly have Legacy of the Jedi, the finale. Now, I have talked about this several times in other videos, from before we even got to the prequel era, to during Darth Plagueis, to during the Jedi Apprentice series, to now. But if you're a normal person, you can read it all here. A general summary of the past 3 parts that I'm not really discussing. The first part focused on Dooku and his friend Lorian at the Jedi Temple growing up. Like the only little short that we have focusing on Dooku young. The second portion followed Dooku as the master and Qui-Gon as the apprentice as they go on a mission. And the connecting thread throughout all these stories is Lorian, Dooku's old friend. So Lorian makes an appearance. He is now a bad guy, and they have to stop him. Third part focuses on Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, of course. Qui-Gon's now the master. Obi-Wan's now the apprentice. And they run into Lorian again. Shenanigans ensue. That's what you've missed. But I've been reading it chronologically, which is why I've been doing it the way I've been doing it. But you can theoretically read this all in one sitting if you prefer. But the specific part I'm talking about right now is part 4, which of course is during the Clone Wars and focuses on Obi-Wan and Anakin. But of course, the connecting thread being Lorian makes a return. So again, this is another thing that bothers my OCD. The story claims it is 6 months after the Battle of Geonosis. You could theoretically place it here. Again, I didn't know exactly when this part of the book took place. I just knew that it was during here, and I saw a couple timelines, and they put it here. So this is where I placed it. Again, you can kind of just ignore that one-off thing. Continuity-wise, though, chronological order, you should probably place it before, but I put it here because it's where I saw another timeline put it, and I didn't know where else to put it, so I put it here. Like I said, the Clone Wars has a lot of stories, so it's really hard to find like an exact chronological order, especially when this is your first time going through it. Whereas if this was like my 3rd or 4th time, maybe I can have an exact chronological order. Maybe I'll do that sometime. I'll write it down, post it on like Instagram or something. Chronological order, every single story or something. I don't know. But somebody else had it here, so this is where I'm placing it. But it does say 6 months, so if you wanted to go in chronological order better than I just did, you'd have to place it sometime before Republic Commando. That being said, Dooku is trying to get this planet to convert to the Separatist Alliance, of course. Lorian has come back. He is seemingly reformed from his evil ways. He's left prison after being there for years. Of course, Obi-Wan doesn't trust him. He's biased because of his adventure with Qui-Gon. Stuff happens. Also, some good character moments between Anakin and Obi-Wan happen. But we mostly see it from the perspective of Obi-Wan. One really nice thing, not really a spoiler, but we do get a reference to Jedi Quest in here with a couple characters that return, which is really cool, and I really appreciated that. Without getting into spoilers, I don't really have any spoilers to say. So, and this is the entire 6 films legacy to me. This is the message, the most biggest important message that it has to convey, which also ties back to my religious beliefs. But it's really signified here is the story of redemption. I won't get into it too much, non-spoilers. There is redemption. Anakin certainly believes in it. He talks about it here. And Lorian does get redemption in this story. And for a character who only exists within the confines of this book, it is still, whether you read it in chronological order as I did, or you read it all in one sitting, I think Lorraine's a very interesting character. And I did feel bad when the ending happened. And I think it worked really well. And I think Jude Watson, who wrote this, of course, is an absolute genius. But that is pretty much it. Up next, we head back to the comics, which I believe with one of the most important arcs in the multimedia project, which is the Battle of Jabim. The Battle of Jabim, the reason I mentioned that this comic arc is super duper 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 important for those who say the EU is never canon, blah, 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 blah. It was never canon, huh? So this next arc in the comics, being directly mentioned in the episode 3 novelization, that just isn't important. Anyway, I've heard a lot about it. I don't know the exact details. I'm very excited to get to that comic, and that is what's up next. So I hope you all join me for that. I don't really have any spoilers. In fact, you know what? I think I've adequately explained myself. I don't think I really need to go into spoilers. There's nothing really more to say. You want to know what happens? Find out. Those of you who already read it, you know. But I definitely enjoyed this book. I think it was amazing being able to see Dooku young, being able to see a little snippet of Dooku and Qui-Gon's relationship. We should have gotten more of that. We should have had more of that. That was such an interesting thing that we got to look into. If you want to hear my thoughts about that, you got to go back a couple videos. I don't even remember the exact videos where I talk about it anymore, but it's spliced in there. You can find it. But yeah, really enjoyed this. Jude Watson knocked out of the park again. And I'll see you next time as we keep going through the Clone Wars. Trying my best in chronological order. Until next time, guys, may the Force be with you.